Is there anything more irritating than finding a bug infestation in your house? The creepy crawlers laying waste to the food you forgot to lock up, establishing their domain in your beloved home, and eliciting blood-curdling screams from germaphobes and scaredy cats alike? There is actually. It's finding out that the bug infestation is proudly led by a gang of roaches. Anybody who has ever tried to get rid of these creatures will tell you how resilient they are. They can hold their breath for long periods of time, can live many days without their heads, and many theorize that they can even survive a nuclear apocalypse. But no amount of impressive facts about them can reduce the intense hatred we have for roaches when we find them in our houses. So, what happens when they get mutated and begin hunting us? The 1988 movie, The Nest, is the answer to this question. So, let's dig right in. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The Nest. Origins. Terrence H. Winkless debuted his directorial skills in the 1988 movie The Nest, which is a gory sci-fi horror movie. It is based on Eli Cantor's 1980 novel of the same name, which he published under the pseudonym Gregory A. Douglas. The setting of the movie is Northport, a tiny island where the people are very close and informal, and where everyone gets too caught up in everybody's business. The mayor of this tiny town, Elias Johnson, decides to allow Intech, a corporation, to set up a base in the town to conduct their experiments in exchange for their monetary contributions. Intech promises the mayor that they will invest in the development of Northport, and Elias figures that it's a good deal, as development might welcome more tourists and stop the residents from leaving the island. One of the genetic engineers working for Intech, Dr. Morgan Hubbard, plays a major role in these experiments and intends to create a world without fertilizers and pesticides. To reach this goal, she decided to genetically alter cockroaches to attack each other, which would surely take out the cockroach population soon. But there is hardly any guarantee about how the new cockroaches would turn out, and since this is a dystopian sci-fi fiction flick, don't lay too much of your hope in this experiment. Early victims and discovery of the deadly creatures. The sheriff of this town, Richard Tarbell, wakes up to a message from Millie, his secretary, informing him about the complaints she has received. While Richard listens to Millie report that a tourist girl and a young boy named Richard Gordon have disappeared, he accidentally drinks a cockroach with his morning cup of coffee, and that is when he realizes that his house is teeming with the brown pests. Things have been strange throughout Northport. Mrs. Pennington, the stocky librarian who broke her legs, complains to Richard that kids have torn out every single page from the books in the library overnight. Richard takes a closer look at the books and tells Mrs. Pennington that some bugs probably ate the glue out of the binding. Though she isn't satisfied with his answer, Richard has bigger cases to handle, and he leaves. What Richard doesn't know is that the missing people are the very first human victims of the hybrid roaches. However, the first victim to be discovered by the residents of the town is a dog that is stripped of its flesh by an intrusion of cockroaches. That is what a group of cockroaches is called, by the way, an intrusion. How befitting, as these creatures are never welcomed, and they are always an intrusion. Back in Northport, Elizabeth Johnson, the mayor's daughter and the sheriff's ex-girlfriend, is the first to see the gory scene, and she immediately calls Richard. Richard discovers many tiny black oblong beads on the poor dog's corpse, and he pockets one of them. Nobody obviously thinks the suspects are roaches, because who has ever heard of carnivore cockroaches? They think it's a mountain lion or another huge predator. Although Richard wants to begin an investigation, the mayor stops him, telling him that since the area where the dog was found belonged to Intech, they can leave it up to them. Although Richard disagrees, he doesn't put up a big fight over it. Meanwhile, Jake, Richard's current girlfriend's father, is hunting rats with a gun when suddenly one of the rat's head hurtles away from its body. Jake tries to investigate and finds out that a huge gang of cockroaches had violently hunted the rat. Jake, who seems to be drunk, tries to hide under the covers, but the roaches find him and begin nibbling at his flesh. The next day, new problems arise in the town as the roaches have started infesting the meat of the island. They get a call from Mr. Perkin, the owner of the local grocery and meat shop, and his temporary employee, Jenny. Jenny who is Mrs. Pennington's ditzy niece and has been spending her vacation at Northport, shows the sheriff the contaminated meat. Jenny suggests that it might be a tasteless prank, and Richards adds on to it, saying that the visiting tourists often have a weird sense of humor. Once again, Richard doesn't suspect cockroaches, but sees the black oblong beads again and collects them. Jenny draws his attention to a cut electrical cord, and he asks her to keep an eye out for mice who might have been gnawing at them. The evil scientist. Dr. Morgan Hubbard heads back to Northport after Elias calls her, and the first thing she does is set a trap for the roaches, using a live cat as bait. If you had any doubts about whether she had a heart, well, this pretty much proves she's pure evil. Instead of being horrified, she's completely fascinated as the roaches strip the poor cat down to the bone in minutes. She scoops them up, takes them to her lab, and starts studying them because, surprise, surprise, her little science project has gone completely off the rails and created full-on mutant roaches. These cockroaches, which Dr. Hubbard thinks are very strange and very brave creatures, are black in color. They are about 2 to 3 inches long, and they don't run from light like their predecessors. These creatures impress Dr. Hubbard with their warlike hunting strategy. Although the mayor asks her to contain them before they take more lives, she is too busy admiring them. They can multiply easily, as cockroaches do not need their male counterparts to reproduce. As the evil scientist tries to study them, the roaches attack her and bite through her thick lab gloves to gain access to her skin. But this isn't enough to drive the point home to Dr. Hubbard, and she watches in awe as blood begins to ooze out of her wounds. The cockroaches have developed a certain resistance to rotenone, a common poisonous element found in pesticides, and only die when dealt with a lethal dose. The mayor wants to immediately start spraying the island with a new dose, but Hubbard remarks that it would be extremely lethal to human beings. By this point, Richard finds out that Dr. Hubbard was kicked out of MIT for conducting illegal experiments. He asks Homer P. Barham, the local pest control agent, if he knows about the black beads, and he identifies them as large paraplaneta, or in simple terms, cockroach poop. Richard asks Homer if he thinks cockroaches can do the meat damage seen in Perkins' shop. Homer ridicules the idea and drives away, but he is shocked to his core that night when he tries to find his friend Jake and discovers his half-eaten corpse still being gnawed at by the roaches. The dead bodies of the missing people are also found, and soon, Northport finds itself in an all-out war with the roaches. Jenny, while taking pancakes to her aunt, who is bedridden due to a broken leg, spills some maple syrup. The roaches soon track it down and attack the injured Mrs. Pennington. She screams out to her niece for help, but she has headphones on and doesn't realize the trouble her aunt is in. As the cockroaches finish off her aunt, they attack her next. The local diner is also a hotspot for them, and they brutally consume a worker in the diner named Church. By now, the cockroaches are clearly bigger and thicker. Lillian, the owner of the diner and Richard's girlfriend, puts up a brave fight against the roaches, microwaving some, smashing the others, but in the end, she is easily outnumbered and decides to hide out in the walk-in freezer. The evolving mutants. The evil roaches have not yet stopped evolving, and as Dr. Hubbard studies a new roach, she realizes that they are far more advanced and superior than the previous murder-minded bugs, and that their eggs not only survive the attack of rotenone, but are completely unaffected by it. After she informs this to Elias, he decides to cancel the plans to evacuate and spray the island. The problem is, the signal they had decided upon was the lighting of the lighthouse beam. The cockroach infestation had destroyed all the wires and cables, making it impossible to turn on the light. Richard, who had discovered the mangled corpses of Millie and Lillian, frozen to death, confronts the mayor, who tells him how the cockroaches had been created. As we explained earlier, the motive of the experiment was good, but the genetically altered roaches had grown extremely hungry. Moreover, the new roaches had begun to evolve rapidly, combining the life forms they ingested. Think of you are what you eat, but as literally as possible. They had become intelligent and were working together like social beings. Homer, who had joined Richard after his attempts to blaze the creepy crawlies had accidentally burnt his whole house, tells the group that it might be possible that they have a queen. If there's a queen, there has to be a nest. Elizabeth, who had broken into the intact company grounds, remembers seeing a lot of the hybrids in a cave and tells them that that is where the nest might be. The mayor's house is the next location of attack by the cockroaches, and the mayor is killed. In Dr. Hubbard's laboratory, unknown to Homer and Richard, a giant ootheca begins to hatch. The egg belongs to one of the cockroaches that was trapped by Dr. Hubbard. Since the cockroach had eaten a cat, the egg hatches into a cat roach with exposed flesh and 2 white bony mandibles. The mandible is like a horizontal jaw, and the roaches use them to bite and grind their food. The trio tries to subdue the creature, but this monstrous creature also has speed on its side as it zips around the room. Dr. Hubbard informs everyone that the carbon dioxide and fire extinguishers can freeze the insects and sprays the cat roach after Richard insists. However, it recovers almost immediately, and Homer topples a cupboard over it and smashes it to death. Hubbard is still sympathetic to the monsters she created and doesn't want to see them dead. If only Frankenstein had taken a page from her book. The final boss. Elizabeth leaves her bug-infested house and offers to show Dr. Hubbard the nest, while Homer and Richard try to get the light beam on. But the cockroaches seem to be smart and in tune with the plans of the party as they attack Richard's car. Homer and Richard try a lot to fight them off with a fire extinguisher, but there are way too many of them than 2 men could handle. While this is going on, Elizabeth and Dr. Hubbard reach the caves. Hubbard still has no sense of self-preservation as she starts collecting samples. Elizabeth begins to set explosives in the cave to blow up the nest. The smart queen immediately calls her infantry back to the nest, and the cockroaches in Richard's car retreat. In the nest, we see the most evolved form of the roach hybrid, which might even be the queen. Approximately 7 feet tall, the creature has around 5 skulls, and at least 2 of those skulls are human. It is a truly terrifying creature, as it has a lot of arms, and its bones and flesh are clearly visible. It is also incredibly powerful, as it tears away Dr. Hubbard's arm and drills into her skull using its mandible. Richard arrives just in time to pull out Elizabeth, and the explosives go off. Unknown to Richard, a roach sneaks onto his shoe, avoiding death and silently threatening another invasion. Marvelous verdict. Cockroaches are ancient creatures. They are older than dinosaurs and have seen the birth and death of over 1 million species. Saying that these cockroaches will easily outlive humans is not a hard gamble to take. Let's hope that they're evolving to be the carnivorous mutant predators is just a long stretch of the imagination and not something we will live to see one day. Which insect would be completely terrifying if they suddenly turned against humanity one day? Cockroach is definitely a good answer, but do let us know if you think any differently. If you like this video, please leave us a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to Marvelous Videos for more amazing videos. Thank you and have a great day.